It's the Kacee Allen Show.
So today we have Roleigh Martin on the show for a really exclusive interview. You guys are going to love the topics of this show, and it's going to be really about what's going on in the world and a bit of the past. So enjoy. So Roleigh Martin, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Kacee. Let me tell the audience a little bit about my background. My Andy Warhol 15 Minutes of Fame was during the year 2000 problem. I gave the keynote address for the two-day conference of electrical engineers in London in June 1998. They paid all expenses. And I gave the keynote opening address. And I was pretty well known for gathering information and showing the big wide picture and all the little things you have to be concerned about.
So what got you started down that path there? Because obviously you don't just jump in and become a writer. Like, did you always aspire to be one when you were younger? Did you get a job opportunity? Like, what got you down that pathway?
Well, that goes back to high school because we had a published book author in my little high school. It was Walsh High School in Tumble, Iowa. And I wanted to become a writer back from high school. I got an IBM Selectric back in the 60s, and that was the equivalent of a personal computer back then. That was a typewriter. They had like a little golf ball that rotated, and you had the ability to erase things and start over a word. You didn't have to throw away the whole page. And so that was what writers did back then before computers. I got my first computer in 1981, and it was before PC-DOS and MS-DOS existed. It was the CP/M operating system. I spent $18,000 on a personal computer. I sold it with a tax write-off, only lost $1,000. So I sold it a year and a half later. But the other thing interesting about the year 2000 problem, because I did about close to 80 some articles on that, was the White House Y2K czar, John Koskinen. I thought at the time that he worked for Clinton, he ended up becoming the IRS chief. And what happened under Obama kind of took away from his reputation. But under Clinton, he was known for being really truthful. He didn't try to hide the picture, the complexity, or anything. And some people, put him down because Clinton obviously lied. Mm-hmm. But I stood up for John. I just stood up for him in the sense of whatever was truthful. So John Koskinen sent me a nice autograph photograph, and what was interesting was he sent me this envelope with the White House and stamping. So when you mail something, it first of all gets an internal marking inside the internal post office at the White House. But then if it goes through the system, it gets additional marking that kind of messes up the stamp. This only has the initial marking. It didn't go through the mail. And it's an imaginary 5 postage stamp collection. First day of issue of the stamps of men landing on Mars. And the picture of Elon Musk isn't too good there.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's from 1998, right?
Yeah, this is from 1998, October 19th.
Wow, and I mean, it still looks in great condition. You would think that was from yesterday.
I think someday these stamps might be worth money, so I'm just kind of keeping them. But and then the government of England, I was actually more popular in England. They handed out these type books to all the businesses, and they had 2 books, and in each book I had a chapter. And the way they did it in England was interesting. They had private businesses pay for the cost of printing and distribution. So like you see Hewlett-Packard ads and stuff like that. But it was actually put out through the government Y2K Council. And when I spoke over there, they told me that my reputation in England, I was, like the top 2 writers on Y2K in England. And some of the professional journals, like this one here, Year 2000 Journal, I had the Year 2000 Embedded System Threat to Core Infrastructure Systems, and pinning down the utilities. And I also wasn't, a paranoid conspiracy theorist. By early '99, I kind of predicted the way it was going to play out as it went through the rollover. So I figured most of the excitement was going to be behind the scenes, and that it wouldn't be that bad going.
Yeah,
I was correct.
What was the first conspiracy or thing that was deemed a conspiracy that you had interest in, or that really caught your attention? Or you thought that the government could be conspiring against the American people?
Well, at the time, I was a little bit young for the John F. Kennedy assassination. I was curious about it. I thought there was more to it than what we were being told. But I started really getting suspicion when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Mm-hmm. And, but nowadays,
I mean, there's something new every
the
day.
conspiracy theorists are more right than wrong on everything now.
Really?
That's
the thing I tell everybody. I would be I would believe someone who is, just a regular guy in the street compared to someone who's being paid to, purport some type of propaganda by mainstream media, or, someone with money or some sort of motive to, take away the truth. That's what I see. And it's pretty interesting how we've evolved from that, because people do trust independent sources more than mainstream media. I mean, it's evident. We see, CNN, they could be possibly off the face of the earth in the next 5 years. They're losing 15% of their viewership every month. So again, it's why we have, different sources with this level of trust. And, people like you've seen it all. You've been, like you said, you were around with Martin Luther King when he was assassinated. How old were you when that happened?
I forget the exact year, but I think it was after John F. Kennedy. I think Kennedy was assassinated first, Martin Luther King later. And so I was born in '49. So 63 was Kennedy. So I was like 14. I was in high school when he was assassinated. Martin Luther King, I was a little bit older. Definitely. And later we found out that the FBI had files on him for a long time and everything. But in hindsight, today he'd be considered far right, because he didn't believe in equal outcomes. He believed in equal opportunity. But you had to earn your way through. He said, judge a person on their merit, not on the color of their skin. Now you judge a person on the color of their skin, not their merit. It's totally upside down from what he wanted for America.
Exactly. So, what got you to the point to where you said, I want to take my writings to X or social media platforms? When did you realize that the digital transformation of information was relevant to where it is today?
Oh, well, I started on X just kind of as an observer when it was called Twitter. But the minute that Elon bought it, and there was a premium plan to sign up for it, I immediately did it. Because Elon said the more people that pay for membership on X, the less amount of money they need from advertisers. And the less money they need from advertisers, the more they can disregard any requests to censor. So if you want a censor-free social media platform, I mean, it's great if half the members can be paying members, and then you don't and then you get a lot of benefits. You get a better promotion on your post, on replies. You get access to X articles, which I just love. Mm-hmm. And X articles is where it can be in a very long content with multiple pictures. Your normal post can only have one picture in it.
Yeah, so those of you that don't know, X has a new feature called X Articles, to where you can basically write your own articles on the platform. You can use pictures, links. It's like an unlimited amount of space you could put your own free thoughts. And it's something that hasn't been fully utilized to where, we think it should be with, digital media, digital information. But Roleigh himself has reached, millions of people with his total articles on X. And, it's really interesting to hear your perspective on this. Like, you're mainly focused on the three-player chess. We should probably get into that's.
Two things:
yeah.
3-player chess and reforming Congress, going back to historical methods of the way they conducted voting.
Yeah.
Those are the two things.
Yeah. So those are crucial points we wanted to cover. So obviously, with your first article, which I think was one of your recent ones, actually. It was called "Groupthink Affects Trump's Campaign Risking a 2020 Repeat." Now, so what is groupthink? I know you're really big on the groupthink definition and what that means. What is, to viewers that don't understand that, what does that mean exactly?
Okay, well, groupthink became popularized after John F. Kennedy, when he took office. Within that first year, they had the Bay of Pigs fiasco. And that's where it was kind of a CIA launched, planned operation to overthrow Castro. And it was horribly carried out plan, failed, and quite a few people on the ground were imprisoned or killed by the Castro regime. And it was a big failure for Kennedy. And they commissioned analysts and a commission to look at why was it so much of a disaster. And out of that came 2 books, and which the article talks about, those 2 books. And they use the term groupthink. And the fact that nobody wanted to break out of the politically correct way to think about it. So once the groupthink in that thing is, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna succeed. That was the groupthink. And they didn't have in the group any outliers, continually arguing the other way. And it's good to have outliers. I consider myself an outlier.
So like more of like an independent thinker, I guess, or is that the way to?
Yeah, someone who questions the dominant way of thinking.
Yeah.
And the problem with the Trump campaign groupthink is we have the historical opportunity of, let me show you the scenario. It's the quickest way to get to it. Let's imagine, right, at a little background. If you look at, there's a link on the website, and I got it here, but they look at all the polling averages of a 2-way race or a 3-way race, with Robert F. Kennedy in the race. And so it's like 1,009 polls, and every day they update the average, and they keep it, they say that 95% of the polls are within that average, So the average is very important. So Trump is vacillating between being 0.8 of 1%, 0.8%, better than Biden, to being 1% better than Biden in a 2-way race. But in a 3-way race with Bobby Kennedy on the ticket, he's already eligible in 26 states. And his plan is to be eligible in all 50 states by the end of the summer.
How many states is he eligible in right now?
It's like 26 or 27.
Yeah, so what you're saying though is you believe that RFK will take away more Biden voters.
Oh yeah,
and
the polls show that Trump does, it depends on the day. So like yesterday, Trump would have done 300% better in a 3-way race. Because what's happening is Bobby Kennedy is more appealing to Democrats than he is to Republicans. Because most of the Republicans who are for Trump are faithful to Trump, and they're not gonna leave him. Whereas, how many people are faithful to Biden?
Less and less every day.
Yeah, less and less every day. So they're looking for somebody that is charismatic and intelligent and acts like he wants to represent the people's interests. So RFK is kind of like the populist leader for the independents. And he's grabbing a lot of the Democrat vote, and the polls show it. So imagine, and RFK is asked to be on a debate with Trump. Now imagine that Trump accepts the debate. Let's imagine it happens within a week or 2, okay? Elon Musk, who owns X, formerly known as Twitter, has said that, yeah, he'll host the debate. So imagine the moderators are Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, And if they had the same number of people watch the debate as the Kennedy-Nixon debate of 1960, projected to today's population, it would be 188 million Americans watching that debate. Maybe not live, but the streaming thing. So, and if anybody has seen any of the videos of Robert F. Kennedy, you'll find that he is extremely intelligent, extremely articulate. Many of his books became bestsellers for months and months and months, despite the New York Times, disagreeing with him being not in the consensus viewpoint. You can imagine that within a week or two, half of the Democrats would have shifted their allegiance to Bobby Kennedy. And once that happens, you get a free fall effect, because the average person doesn't want to be on a losing team. So you can imagine within a month, 75% of the support for the Democrat nominee gone over to the independents.
Well, let's just say hypothetically that Bobby Kennedy does get on the ballots, which it looks like he probably will. How much of the vote do you think he will get in general? Like, do you think he'll get 10%, 20%, 30%? Could he even get half the country to vote for him? Like, how much of an impact would he actually make if this was a three-way race?
Well, that's an interesting question. And as a background, I used to live in Minnesota. And in 1998, an independent, charismatic young mayor of a city in Minnesota, and he was also a talk show host, kind of like the Kacee Allen of the day.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
And he was an ex-Navy SEAL. He was famous in the world of wrestling, Jesse Ventura. And he went from an 8% standing in the polls to become governor of Minnesota in April, and he went on to win the election. But it was crucial that he got on the debates, because in front of a Republican politician and a Democrat politician, the Democrat was the son of Hubert Humphrey, who was at the vice president under LBJ. Mm-hmm. And also Norm Coleman was the Republican. He used to be a Democrat mayor, but then he became a Republican. So those are the two politicians. And Jesse stole the show. Once he was on stage, it's like everybody just, kind of fell in love with him. And he took over the race at that point. He ended up winning. So, and Trump got involved. I think he met Jesse. I don't know if he flew out and spoke with him, but it really impressed Trump. So it's probably one of the reasons that Trump seems to be a little bit hesitant to debate Bobby. I think he's afraid of how strong Bobby is. But to me, what's important, the opportunity is Trump could go down as the next best president since Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln in 1856 to 1860, the dominant party, there was no Republican Party, it was the Whigs. And the new Republican Party broke the political mode. They were against slavery. And at the time, it was against expanding slavery. And then later on, it was, slavery, everywhere. And they made the Whig Party disappear from American history. It's just a memory now. Your average person probably wouldn't be able to say anything about the Whig Party. But if, like the scenario of the debate, we get 75% of the Democrat vote to leave the Democrat choice, at that point, the combined vote for Trump-Kennedy in polls would be about 80%. And once you get a political party with only 20% of the vote, and they are on a downhill slide, at that point they become, at least for the election, historically irrelevant. And see, and there's more independents now than there are in either party.
Oh yeah, that's been shown in polls. Like that is.
Yeah. So Trump should make his dominant opposition, his dominant concern should be Kennedy and the independents. And he should basically consider the Democrat and what they had to offer America totally irrelevant, that woke BS.
And it's funny because I think that's where America is. I mean, Biden's own administration, the news outlets, they've completely turned against him like we've never seen. for an actual sitting president, almost like Nixon. Like we've never really seen this amount of people ostracize an actual president. Almost you could say that this is more than Trump in a way, because he just has, Biden has so little support. And that's exactly where the average moderate Democrat is right now. They're questioning why they even voted for this guy in the first place, and they certainly don't want to vote for him again.
Yeah.
So that puts on the table.
So
Do I vote for
if
Kennedy?
Trump did that, and so all of a sudden at the end of the summer, everybody considers the Democrat Party choice irrelevant. There's going to be no temptation among the Democrats, and like the rank and file election worker or ballot scanner, or there's going to be no temptation to actually rig the election anymore, because it's just statistically so far away from being believable or doable, you know. Right now, if you're only 1 or 2% ahead of the opposition, hey, that's 2020 again. And this time, the Biden administration owns the election results integration system. They own the Department of Justice. They have stuffed the courts with judges favorable to the Democrat Party for the last 12 of 16 years. So the ability, and what's the Trump plan now? It's like, get more voters, get more votes. Oh, we'll have a bunch of lawyers ready to contest anything in court. That's their game plan, is 3 things.
And say, I've been actually really critical about that myself. I've even said that they need to incorporate my generation into what we're doing. I mean, it's really bombarded with Gen X, Gen Z, or millennial, just people that have been pretty much in that system their entire career. And yeah, it's not a very concise plan. I mean, although I obviously am an elected Republican and do agree with the majority, there are some things I'm openly critical about, and yeah, that's one of them for sure.
And I go into this in my article. And so, like, if he did this, there would be pressure for Trump to really compete with the platform of Bobby Kennedy. Now, Bobby Kennedy has got the Libertarian Party of Colorado. He's gung-ho on Bitcoin and the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be the temptation for Trump to respond and pick Vivek as his vice president. And with Vivek in the vice president, Vivek has done real well with the libertarians in that. So the idea, like, you know, this idea, oh, I'll go with Rubio because he's Hispanic and, you know, that would be appealing. He's a neocon, you know, he's very much for the military-industrial complex. It's like, it'd be a temptation for the, you know, the deep state to take out Trump, you know, and replace him with Rubio, if that's the case. But if they put in Vivek as his vice president, they're going to do everything they can to keep Trump alive, because they don't want Vivek taken over. So I'm hoping that Trump shows more sense than he did in 2016 and 2020 in picking such a rotten vice president candidate.
And yeah, he picked the swamp the entire time. We saw the horrible administration, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton. It's literally the swamp. So
Yeah.
like, and Trump claims that the VP pick was never important. Even now it's not. But I think that's kind of the opposite. I think his VP pick will pretty much define his next administration. Will it be the establishment with like a Rubio or like a Ted Cruz, someone like that? Or will he go with Vivek or someone that's, you know, newer and isn't an establishment hack? Because you're right, if they do take out Trump, that is insurance with Vivek. Because you know Vivek, he's going to be just aligned with that. He's going to step in Trump's shoes and he'll be the leader that I think we need.
The other thing is, Trump shouldn't feel that he couldn't be a good match for Kennedy. He took on 15 Republican debaters in 2016 and beat them all in the debates. So yeah, Trump would need to probably consult Thomas Massey and Rand Paul to help coach him for a debate with Bobby Kennedy. Those would be the 2 people I'd want to have coaching me. But it would focus Trump into kind of being, here's what I positively can do for America and the American future that's better than what Bobby Kennedy is promising. Right now, he's just competing with the woke, you know, baloney of the Democrat Party. But the whole election would be 1,000 times more interesting. And worst case, if it went on that Trump did lose by 1 or 2 points to Bobby Kennedy at the final election, maybe the Democrats get 15% of the vote, and that 15% would represent those people whose life, their career would be in jeopardy with Kennedy. They're with the military-industrial complex. Kennedy wants to cut it in half. They're with a big pharma. Definitely Kennedy wants to take away vaccine liability. And
so it's almost like, what is the difference though? I mean, obviously different parties, but when it comes down to Trump and RFK's beliefs and what they're trying to put forward, it's honestly a lot the same. I think there's a few discrepancies with, things with RFK being focused on the environment, but like, it's pretty interesting how transparent they seem with their strategies. I mean, am I not right or am I wrong?
Well, in some ways, Kennedy is to the right of Trump. He wants a balanced budget, and we haven't had a realized budget surplus at the end of the government fiscal year since 1957. We are increasing the national debt $1 trillion every 100 days. And you don't really see any focus on how Trump is going to get us back to those days. I mean, one of my, half my interest in writing is reforming Congress. And to have an incentive where the Congress can split 1/10,000th of a budget surplus. And a budget surplus means that at the end of the fiscal year, the outstanding total debt of the country is less than it was a year ago. And that hasn't happened since 1957. In fact, you have to go back 100 years to Coolidge, when for the length of a presidential 2 terms, that the national debt kept going down, and when the president left office, it was lower than when he started office. The last president that happened with was Coolidge. I mean, 100 years ago. And so if we reduce the national debt by 3% and divide that surplus by 10,000 and split it among the 535 senators and representatives, each legislator would get $196,000. So try to have the incentive in Congresses, instead of getting rich by doing sneaky stuff and taking bribes and all that stuff, get rich by helping the country get rich. Because if you start having budget surpluses, mortgage rates will go down, loan rates will go down. It will be fantastic. The economy will zoom. It will be amazing what could happen. Kennedy is focused on doing that. And you don't see that on Trump. So Trump is farther to the right on some parts, farther to the left on some parts. So there's kind of it's an interesting competitive thing. Now, there's an awful lot of BS propaganda going out saying, oh, Kennedy is wacko. Mm-hmm. And Trump is famous for putting out some of those things. And in my article, I show some of the posts that Trump has done. But why would Trump want to keep his main opponent being the Democrat Party? After what they've done to his life, I would want to totally crush it. And that's what he should be doing. And he can do it. He can be the human in history that totally moves the Democrat Party to being a bad nightmare history.
You think he personally, just because of the 2020 election and his beef with Biden, you think he actually wants to beat Biden on November? Like, basically, he doesn't want to clear him out the way. He wants Biden to actually go to the very end so we can, actually beat him fair and square.
I think he wants that. But,
yeah.
But the point of the matter is, even in the end, if Kennedy beat Trump by a couple points, Trump's name is still going to go down in history as the greatest president since Lincoln, because he obsoleted the Democrat Party. He can do that. Now, one of the things, if people can remember 1980 when President Reagan, he took 49 states. I mean, he really smashed the election. He debated the independent John Anderson, and it was the most watched television debate that year. And President Carter, his opponent and the incumbent at the time, refused the debate. So it was just between Reagan and Anderson, the independent. Now, at that point, it was in September, and Anderson was on all 50 states, whereas Kennedy right now is on 26 or 27 states. And yes, for the nitpickers, he's met the eligibility requirements and submitted the signatures, but the Secretary of State hasn't okayed everything. And in some of the states where it's a Democrat-ran thing, the Democrats are far more terrified of Bobby Kennedy than the Republicans are. Even Charlie Kirk admitted that Kennedy takes away 20% of the Democrat vote. And I don't know why Charlie Kirk has been quiet about Kennedy. I think it's a group thing. Whatever that Trump wants, his team, mouths the same thing. And then the major people he interviews mouth the same thing. And then the smaller influencers on X and Facebook and that, they don't want to, upset the political correctness up the chain. So they don't want to be an outlier. I mean, I'm kind of risking myself, being ignored by all the normal MAGA influencers because I'm doing that. In fact, I spoke with one MAGA influencer, and she thinks I'm nuts. Why would Trump want to debate Kennedy? It's like they ignore the history. They don't know anything about John Anderson. They don't know anything about three-player chess.
And that's the groupthink mentality right there.
Yeah.
That you're explaining.
Yeah, that's a groupthink. So it's an interesting article, and I hope the audience reads it. And it goes back to the original article about three-player chess, and I give you the rules for the game and links to a game set. It's a fun party game because in three-player chess, a lot of times the most powerful person, in our case, it's the Democrats because they have the election result integration system and the Department of Justice and most of the judges involved. A lot of times the big person loses because the two smaller players will be friendly to each other and take out the big guy. And that's basically by Trump agreeing to debate with Kennedy. And Kennedy's already asked for the debate, so all Trump has to say is yes. And that debate happens and, voila. History is made within 2 or 3 weeks. It's that simple.
And I think it's very possible that could happen because if you've seen Trump's interviews, like when he's on planes, like flying to event, he actually said recently, he's like, Bobby Kennedy, he's a smart guy, but at the same time, he's to the left of Joe Biden. So he gives him all these compliments, but at the same time, it's like, shuts him down at the same time. So it's like, you can tell he probably would be willing to debate the guy, but he just wants to make sure it's in his best interest.
Well, it is in his best interest right now. He doesn't have to wait till he's on, all 50 states. By doing it and telling the Republican secretaries of states in the remaining states, approve body signatures. Get them on the ballot. That helps out the Republican. And then and be doing amicus brief support in any Democrat states where there's any holdup in getting him on the ballot. So we should be pushing that Bobby's on the ballot in all 50 states. And so one of the things I say in the article, as an individual, you can be going out and helping Bobby Kennedy in those remaining 20-some states that he's not yet on the ballot. So like I walk around with, I have if you could show here.
Go ahead and grab it. You got a sign here.
So I walk around with this poster here, and it's a state of official petition here to place the names of Robert F. Kennedy and Nicole Shanahan on the Kentucky 2024 general ballot for president and vice president. And down here I have a picture of a three-player chess game, and I have three-player chess. I am a Trump MAGA supporter for 3 top names on the ballot. Ask me why and what does it have to do with three-player chess. And I've got a shirt that goes along with it, and on the front it has the chessboard, three-player chess, see my back, and then on the back it says, you want to read it?
Yeah, Trump MAGA supporter for 3 names on the ballot /debate. Ask me why.
Yeah, and I am getting, I've gotten 3 pages of signatures so far for Bobby Kennedy. That's about 60 signatures. And only 2 of them are intending to vote for Bobby Kennedy. All the rest are Trump supporters. And they immediately, the person on the street, I talk to them. And 20-25% of them immediately understand the strategy and how Bobby Kennedy can help Trump, devastate the Democrats. And they sign. So the ordinary person on the street understands what I'm saying. It's not complicated at all.
So let's just say that you're a Republican and you're hesitant to sign this. What would you say to convince someone? Because I've noticed a lot of that. There's been a lot of Republicans that are just like, whoa, this is interesting strategy, but I'm not sure if I want to sign this because I don't know the consequences. Like, how would you motivate those people to understand that this is a beneficial strategy to Trump?
Well, I'm trying to build up the point of the matter is, yes, there's a lot of support, but you're talking about living, breathing support. But we're dealing with elections where you don't just count living, breathing people, you count dead people, you count illegal, or you count Democrat votes ran through the machine multiple times, you count fabricated votes penciled in or duplicated in after closing hours. We all remember 2020. So it's like you can't just have the strategy, oh, we need more votes, more voters. No, you gotta push the Democrat support down to the point where you remove the steam, the energy from them to even think about rigging an election. And when they're down to 20, 25, or 15% support, hey, they're going to give up. They're just going to decide, oh, I'll go with Bobby Kennedy. Now, Bobby Kennedy doesn't have the ability to cause the election to be rigged or cheated. Neither does Trump. So the beauty of this strategy is we're going to have an honest election. As close as you could. It will probably be one of the most honest elections in modern American history, because historians know that cheating happened during John F. Kennedy's election. It was Texas and Illinois where the cheating happened. It was actually in Chicago, Mayor Daley, and it was LBJ down in Texas. Yeah, there was cheating.
Do you think it was easier to cheat in elections back then compared to today, or is it like easier now?
Oh, it's easier now, and it was all because of the pandemic. The mail-in ballots, the drop boxes. I mean, and if the Republicans had their act together, then why was 2022 such a disaster in Arizona and some other states? It was supposed to be a red blowout in 2022, and it wasn't. And it was all because that cheating system is still strongly in place. Look at what Wisconsin, they get the Supreme Court has put back, of course they're all Democrats, they put back drop boxes. And there's no transparent chain of command or custody or anything with those drop boxes. So this idea that, oh, we can just relax, Trump is, doing just so fine in the polls. It's like, no, is your memory so short? No. And some of the on X that have a healthy skepticism is Emerald Robinson and Wendy Peterson. Those are the two that I find to be good skeptics. So, yeah, we definitely have to focus on that. I kind of think I've worn this a little bit to the ground. We could, some of the other points I want to mention is those up to 13 to 15 million illegal aliens that get automatically registered to vote. They have to go out of the way to not get registered to vote. Otherwise, they are. They become valid registered name voters that can be hacked and used in the election. Because the Democrats don't want to have more votes than registered voters. So if they have to rig the election, they got to have those registered names there. And the problem with voting is that once a vote has been made, there's no way to take it back. There's no way to, even if you prove that 1 million people voted illegally, you don't know how to readjust. The only thing you can do at that point is do the election over again. And that's extremely rare. They limited that to mostly local elections where they've redone an election. We'd never see that happen.
Well, that's what I mean. They're almost setting it up to happen again. It's by default, I think, election interference when you have 17 out of the 50 states that don't even require or do require you to have a voter ID vote, and the other remaining states don't. So that's more than half of the United States states that literally do not require a voter ID.
And even if you are a registered voter, And they changed the printing machine so that the ballot, instead of it being 8.5 by 11, is a ½ inch off, and that. And so when they put it through the scanner, it gets rejected. And then all of a sudden, one of the techniques is they cause a bunch of the votes to be sent to a reconciliation center, typically overseas. And then you have people deciding, oh, you really intended to vote for Biden, didn't you? You know, it's like, oh, you don't have to read that much to realize Patrick Byrne and I think it's Hovan Pulitzer, I may have pronounced their names wrong, but and there's a Bergner, and there's several people that focus on the type of cheating that goes on in elections. And that's another thing that both Trump and Kennedy want to see honest elections going forward. So the most important goal is that the Democrat choice loses this fall. It's to me, it's less important who wins instead, because it will be an honest contest. It will be what the voters want. It will be honestly counted. And hey, I believe in a good democratic process, but I don't believe in phony stuff. And that's what we had in 2020 and 2022. And you know, we got to stop that. Got to shove their support down to where nobody considers them relevant. So we can go on to the topic of Congress. That's my
I'd love to talk about that. So that was, I believe, the other article that I put in here. What is the title of that one? Let's see. Was that the 1876 Battle of Little Bighorn?
Oh, I got a bunch of the Battle of Bighorn. That's on groupthink. So the idea of groupthink is you need to pay attention to outliers. So had General Custer, who totally got slaughtered with his whole troops at the Battle of Bighorn, he had some Indian scouts, and they told him, don't go there. You know, there's too much of the enemy there. And he ignored them. You know, they're not white, and they're just, you know, they're hardly getting paid. They're outliers. No. The consensus is, I can do it. I know what I'm doing. And then he got killed. So that's a classic example of how ignoring the outlier input it's important. So yeah, there's some interesting stories. And that also goes to something that both Kacee and I are interested in. I use artificial intelligence engines. I use up to 6 of them. I'm going to start going to 7. But the engines are really helpful because it's like talking to a very smart college student. Or they don't know everything. You can prove them wrong, and you can give them evidence to show them, hey, what about this? And they'll say, you're right, I didn't know about that. I'm updating my database. And so if you read my articles, you'll see that a lot of times it's a dialogue between myself and an artificial intelligence engine. And going into the history of Congress, I do that. One of the things I found, the thing I'm most interested in Congress is ever since 1970, when they had the congressional reforms, we went from having 175 registered lobbyists in DC to 13,000 now.
Wow.
And it's because we went, the way subcommittees could vote back then, and did before 73, is the subcommittees could vote totally secret, protected voting, where even the committee chairman didn't know how the committee members individually voted. I mean, and so you didn't have to worry about pissing somebody off if nobody knew how you voted. If the vote was 100-0, of course everybody knew how everybody voted.
So this secret voting, has this been happening all throughout history, or did this start in the 60s?
Well, the legislative secret voting goes all the way back to the start of Congress. It's actually in the Constitution that the only requirement, if at least 1/5 or more of the legislators want it, they have to have an accurate tally of yes and no's. That's it. There's no requirement to have the names of who voted yes and who voted no. That's not in the Constitution at all. And the controversial voting that went on in the first century of Congress, if it was controversial like the Garland inherent contempt or the FISA warrants, the old Congress would have done that with a legislative secret vote where nobody knows how anybody votes. And you can't prove how you vote, and you can't sell your vote, and nobody can punish you for how you vote because nobody knows how you vote. You can't take advantage of how you vote and go to lobbyists and ask for money. So I have two articles. One is on the legislative secret voting in American history, and I break it down by Senate and House, how it worked. But it was basically limited to controversial voting things where they would do that. And then for the rest of them, they would just do a voice vote. It was rare to do a recorded vote by name. There was a voice vote, but if the party boss could see who was raising their hands and that. So it wasn't totally secret, but it was very loose and fast for stuff that, you know, they just kind of went with the consensus. They could figure out, well, all we care about is the support there or not, you know. And they say the ayes have it or the nays have it, and stuff like that.
But essentially the secret voting wouldn't allow the lobbyists to know which way they voted, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They wouldn't, unless the vote was 100-0. But the Constitution allows that if more than 80% of the legislators want it, they don't need to have a tally. They just can say ayes have it, nays have it. So they could, what I'm recommending is we use legislative secret voting. I have 3 exceptions, and that's the third of the 3 exceptions could be debatable. Like for instance, if they're voting to declare war, I think that should be transparent. You're sending people off to the front line.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that should be transparent. The other one is, I recommend that legislators on a one-time only basis are able to double their salary, because right now they get $175,000 a year in the House, and if they were making $350,000, they could afford to have a mortgage in their home state and a mortgage in DC. So I think take away the temptation that you have to sell off the country and sell your soul to the devil and, you know, make money on the side. No, let's give them a decent salary to begin with, and then the incentive to split 1/10,000th of the budget surplus equally among 535. And that way a legislator could make $535,000 a year just by being honest and bringing us back towards a balanced budget. Resuming a discussion about Congress and legislative secret voting, and when I talk to people about this, they're nervous. It's like, oh, I need to know how my legislator votes, because that way I can kick them out. And so what are the counterpoints to this transparency need that people have? I have an article on it. It's called A Pledge for Congressional Candidates to Ensure a Clean and Fantastic Congress. I have a 5-point pledge that I'm trying to get a political movement among GOP primary voters. They alone can save the country. And that every 2 years, the House of Representatives, they have to get voted back in office. Now, if they don't have any opposition in their congressional district, they don't even show up in the primary ballot because they have no opponent. So it's important every 2 years that every incumbent has a challenger. And the challenger is say, I'll take the 5-point pledge, you know, just someone that is going to agree to the 5-point pledge.
And what are the 5-point pledges?
The 5-point pledges, one of them is I'm going to vote that our chamber, there's 2 chambers of Congress, the House and Senate, is going to go for legislative secret voting. And I'll talk about the 3 exceptions why we started it. But otherwise, it's legislative secret voting. And in exchange for legislative secret voting, and the benefit to the congressman is immense, they no longer have to worry about being beaten to death by people who are upset with their vote, or literally beaten to death if they antagonize someone who threatened them in their lives. They don't have to worry about that. I mean, it would be a huge relief. Legislators, I've got several legislators that follow me on my articles and that. And I can tell they're for the idea. I would love to be able to talk for a half hour, have Thomas Massey see this show.
Absolutely. I'm going to show it to everyone that we possibly can in the district. But yeah, this is really insightful. I think it can actually make a strategic change in Congress, because like half the people I've even talked to that are in Congress, they don't even have any sort of strategy like this. They're just plain and simple, buy the book, do what they're told, listen to lobbyists.
It's group thinking.
It's group thinking, exactly. And it's different. It's really what we need.
And the beauty of legislative secret voting is it can be done in state legislatures as long as the state constitution only requires an accurate tally of yes or no's and not the names of who voted the yes or no's. And the few states I've looked at, we could have legislative secret voting in Kentucky. You know, it's just having 50.1% of the legislators in one chamber vote in favor of that rule change. It doesn't require a change to the Constitution, it doesn't require a new law, doesn't require agreement with the other chamber, doesn't require agreement with the governor or the president. So that's the beauty of it. My approach is KISS, keep it simple, stupid, is like, what can we get done with the least amount of change? And this is where I think we can get the most done, is allow the power of the conscience and the intellect, undisturbed by bribes and coercion and money, to be able to vote that. And that way we would be choosing legislators on how articulate their character. For instance, do they have kids? Are they concerned about the future of America? If they have kids, they are concerned about the future of America. What have they done in the community? Do they look like they have a good character, that you can trust them? So the four counterpoints, the four countermeasures, they have to pledge to agree to. Number one, that if they have stock investments in single companies that could benefit from legislation, that they're going to diverse their stock into market neutral investments, so that there's going to be no inclination to vote on something that helps a particular company. So you go to like a 500 company index fund or gold or Bitcoin or treasury CDs, you go to market neutral investments. Now, if you own real estate, I'm not expecting them to sell their business or anything like that. We're talking about just stocks and if, I don't know, bonds, if they were corporate bonds. But those type of investments, they would go market neutral. Number two, they're going to release their tax forms as they're a legislator, so that people can see that they're not doubling their income in 1 year as opposed to what they're getting paid for as a legislator, plus the bonus they could earn splitting that. Of course, they could earn money selling a book and stuff like that. But that would be shown in the tax form. So that's number two. The third countermeasure is that they do a one-time vote to double the legislator's salary, so that they're less tempted, to sell off the country. But only one time double. From then on, the salary will only be adjusted equal to the cost of living increase for Social Security. And the fourth countermeasure is that they will work with the other legislators to pass a bill that does require going through both chambers and getting sign off on the president, but I would assume it would be veto-proof, and that is to split the budget surplus 1/10,000. Since every legislator is going to benefit on that, I can't imagine anyone, if they feel there's a political desire for this, they're all going to vote yes.
I don't see any way that 50% of them don't vote for this. It's just so tempting. Why would you not want to double your salary?
Yeah. So those are the four countermeasures. It's the idea that an ordinary citizen could become a legislator, adhere to the 5 points, and doesn't need to sell off his country in that, So those are the four countermeasures. And at that point, you're going to judge them as a team. How's the team doing? How's the Congress doing? If your mortgage rates dropped to 2%,
yeah.
You got unemployment under 1%, why are you going to be concerned about how your congressman is voting?
That's what I mean. If things were actually that good, it would be less of a concern.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I, as an outlier, talking about politics, to me, of the three branches of government, the Congress, the judiciary, and the president. The most important is Congress, because the Congress is like the architect. You know, it's like the building design comes from Congress. All the president is just supposed to execute the design, and the judges are supposed to determine if there's any quibbles. You know, is the design being carried out? You know, and whatever the laws are. So this idea that we put all this importance on the president, it's like we're trying to make Julius Caesars and dictators. No, the Congress is supposed to be where the action happens. But because the Congress is so coerced, we went, prior to 73, subcommittee votes would be done in secret. You wouldn't even know how the chairman wouldn't even know how his members voted. The lobbyists were not in the room. And now the lobbyists are sitting right next to the legislators. The lobbyists are pretty much putting in the wording for the bills. And like we went from having like 2,000 pages of legislation a year to now having like 8,000 or 9,000 pages. The legislation is so opaque, people don't understand it. We would have a smaller government, a more understandable government, if we went back to legislative secret voting. And some of the landmark studies by political scientists of both parties agree that the more transparency you have in Congress, the more corrupted it is. If you want less corruption, you gotta have less transparency. It seems like, you know, counterintuitive, but it is. Sometimes things are that way. But going back to the three exceptions, I mentioned if it's a declaration of war, that has to be transparent. The other one is if you vote to increase the salary of the congressman after that first initial vote to double. If they ever try to do another outside the cost of living adjustment, that has to be transparent. And then the third thing is controversial, but on an impeachment or a conviction of the president and a impeachment process, is that vote going to be secret or transparent? I favor making it transparent, because the opposite political party could easily remove a president from office if they could vote secretly and stuff like that. So I think we should leave that be transparent. So those are the three exceptions to making legislative voting secret.
Has anyone mentioned this recently? Is this a discussion that's being held at all by any congressman?
I've got the legislators that are the one reposted an article to his audience, but he didn't do a review of it. You know, I also talk in my articles how interesting the Italian Parliament was. In the Italian Constitution in 1848, it was mandated that all final votes on a bill be done through legislative secret voting. They called it voto secreto. And it was interesting how they did it. I actually have a picture in the article of what the voting thing. Before they went to the ballot, they went into a room, and what they did is they picked out a white or a black ball, and then they would go up to an urn, and you know what an urn is? It has a neck. It's like a pottery thing. And they would drop, they had the white or black ball hidden in their hand. In fact, they actually had a piece of paper that covered it so that people couldn't watch what color ball they had. They drop it in the urn, and then later on, the urn was full of white or black balls. And the total count of balls was equal to the number of legislators voting. And so it's interesting because I don't read Italian, so I use 6 different AI engines to explore the Italian legislative history, well, a lot of it in Italian, of course. And I was able to, it's an interesting thing. That article got 230,000 readers. And some famous people on X, like Naomi Wolf and Dennis Rancourt, they're very famous in the anti-COVID vaccine realm. Naomi Wolf is on Bannon's War Room quite often. She reposted the article to her followers, and in my my reading count went up, doubled overnight. It was amazing. That's great when someone like that does it.
Oh no, it's magic. Like whenever a big like influencer reposts your thing, it is like it's crazy. I mean, I've had reposts from Dan Bongino, Jack Posobiec. It was a post that had like maybe 1,000 views, instantly 30,000. It's crazy the effect of like big influencers can make on your posts.
Oh yeah, like this latest article of mine, Wendy Peterson, she reposted her group. So the very first day I went from 0, up to 3,000.
Yeah.
It's only been 4 or 5 days since my latest articles been released. I got 22 articles out now, and but I'm at 5,500 for the group thing article. The other thing neat about X articles, and I have a community on X focused on X article writing. How do you get going with X articles, and what are some of the clever things you can do with it? It's all in one of the guides. So it's called X Article Writers and Reviews. And we're trying to get that to be a mega community where, like right now, there's about 240 X Article writers that I know about. And I have a list that's public of all the X Article writers. And it doesn't matter, what they write about. It's just that they used X articles.
Yeah.
If all their followers join that community, we would have a multi-million audience. We'd probably have about 30, 40 million audience if everybody joined that community. So the purpose of the community is you either read or write X articles. Let's say you just read, it's fine. Get on that community and do reviews. But it allows X article writers to be able to do a review, or somebody else do a review of something where everybody can see.
How do you do that? I've never actually reviewed. Is it like you're commenting on the article, or how does that work?
When you hit the plus sign on X to do a post, at the top left-hand corner of that pop-up window, it defaults to everyone. You can hit the drop-down and change it to one of the communities you belong to. And then the post will go to that community. But on the bottom left-hand corner of that pop-up window is share with your followers. So you can do a post that goes to all of your followers and simultaneously goes to everybody that is a member of that community.
Oh, okay.
So I'm trying to get a posting place where people with a small audience like me, right now I have 4,400 followers. I'd love to have an audience of 20 to 30 million.
Absolutely.
And some of the top X article writers are getting over 15 million reads. Of course, it helps when Elon Musk promotes the article.
Yeah, that is just a free paycheck right there.
Yeah, and X articles just came available in March of this year, so it's still brand new. But I have the best guidebook on how to make the most out of X articles. In my history on this planet, I've been a moderator on a lot of different social media groups. For about 20 years, I've been into backpacking, the John Muir Trail, and I've done it 11 times. That's the highest part of the High Sierra as you go along the Pacific Crest Trail in California from Mexico to Canada. The Sierra is 800 miles long. I've done every inch of those 800 miles. And I live in the mountains for a month every year for 24 years. And it gives you time to, kind of think about life. You get away from the internet and stuff like that. Yeah, you have satellite hookup if you have to communicate with somebody, but you're not in cell range 98% of the time. So it's great anti-aging thing too. I usually lose 20 pounds every year in the hike, and unfortunately when I get back, I find it.
That's what's beautiful about nature though, and exercise. I mean,
yeah.
It does a number.
Yeah. So the other thing on the right eye is, here's my master's thesis when I got it in sociology. I was the first graduate student at the University of Northern Iowa, where we had a committee chairman for the thesis was from more than one discipline. I had 3 disciplines, and I was thinking of futuristic computerized legislators that do group decision making. It is so complex. I was fascinated with computer programs where the output of the group is smarter than the smartest person in the group. And social psychologists had the classic group decision making. You have a room full of equipment, and you have to pick out a subset of that equipment that will make you live the longest on the moon. So there's a real answer that optimizes how long you can live. So they would have each member of the decision-making group, decide, well, if it's just me, this is the equipment I'm going to use. And there would be a quantitative answer, how many days they could live with that. Then they use different group decision-making methods to figure out, all right, let's use this voting method, and we'll see as the group output, how long are you going to live? And your superior group method would allow them to live longer than the smartest member in the group. Now, typically with majority vote, you get kind of a top of the bell curve. So you get a kind of a median, you don't get really brilliance coming out of the group decision making.
Oh yeah.
But, and in my thesis, I covered the 3 methods of voting that each one of them enabled the group to live longer. Unfortunately, it requires the use of computers. I no longer trust computerized decision making. And so this was so complicated to try to sell. I was trying to push this for decades. But what I've come up with, and it came to me in December of last year, is the KISS approach. And when I study the Italian history, it's extremely simple. The idea that they're like miniature, they're not full-size ping pong balls, but the idea that you've got either a white ball or a black ball and you put it in there. Now, I could see problems because whoever's watching you pick up the ball, like what ball did you, if you just pick up a white ball, by watching, the pickup station, you can kind of see how people voted. So, to me, there should be, you pick up both colors.